Good evening. Good evening. Happy New Year. This is the first Safe Space conversation for 2022. Um, I want to remind you that Safe Space is a conversational panel that is intended to be free of judgment, free of harassment, and free of emotional harm. We ask that you keep an open mind and be receptive to different perspectives and being okay with maybe not being okay. Um, Today, to start off our New Year, because I know a lot of us come up with New Year's resolutions. I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to save money, but I wanted us to sort of tweak those resolutions and let's think about our mental health and how we can preserve our mental health in a fun way. Well, my guest tonight is Mike Joyce. He's a vlogger and an adventurer. He hiked from Mexico to Canada. He also climbed some sandstones in Utah. And he's going to tell us about the adventure of hiking across country, climbing the different mountains in the Southwest. And he's going to share with us. So this can, give us an idea of what to add to our bucket list. Even if you don't have one, you can now create one. You can add a bucket list to your vision boards for your resolutions. So Mike, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Wow. Thank you for having me. I guess I am kind of a blogger. I'm photographer, hiker, backpacker, whatever. I like to adventure. I work too. Like I have a job. I'm not paid to adventure. To be clear, adventuring costs money, and so that's why I'm in my van right now. But I have just moved to Phoenix area to work for the winter to save up for the next adventure. This past year, I hiked the Continental Divide Trail from Mexico to Canada, and it was crazy. It was a great time. Lots of unexpected turns and events throughout it, but it was wonderful. And wasn't my first long distance hike. Because you don't some people just dropped everything and hiked this trail this year, but I had a few steps along the way.
So what made you decide to hike across country? So did you wake up and decide that, I'm going to hike across country, or, what were the steps that led up to that decision?
Right. So it's kind of a long story. I've had type 1 diabetes for 25 years, and I grew up going to a summer camp in New Jersey where we hiked a small section of the Appalachian Trail every year. So if I were to say where the seedling was planted for this sort of lifestyle, that was where it was planted. Just the idea that there was this trail that went from Maine to Georgia, from Georgia to Maine, through like the most populated parts of the country was just incredible to me. And I honestly never thought I would be able to do it when I was a small child, because luckily now technology has come so far in diabetes management that I have the resources and the ability to comfortably do it safely. So in college, then I took a class on the Appalachian Trail where we hiked a small section, and that was my first backpacking trip. And then I put it on the back burner. I was like, yeah, one day. And I find that's what most people, I do it with a lot of dreams of my own. Is like, oh, one day I'm gonna do that, and I felt like one day was getting further and further away as I continued to try to use my degree, get a job, chase a career, where I was just unfulfilled and unhappy. And I gained a lot of weight. So then the idea of me doing a long trail was like next to impossible. I was, pushing 275 pounds and just totally unhealthy, and didn't know how to change that. And some diabetes management is part of how I changed that. I got a glucose monitor, which showed me how food was affecting my blood sugars and affecting, then my, I think blood sugars fluctuations have a huge impact on my mental health as well as my physical health. And as I started to take control of my diabetes, weight loss kind of just started happening because I just started naturally choosing healthier options because I knew those would affect my blood sugar less. So I'm not going to get too much into diet because that's a very personal thing. And it's just a matter of finding what works for you. And I found something that worked for me. And I started running as I started to lose weight because I just felt good for the first time in my life because my blood sugars were not all over the place. And so I was miserable at a desk job, and I started running long distances to deal with that mental challenge of cubicle life.
Now, Mike, what do you consider a long distance run? Now, what's a long distance run for you? How many miles?
Well, for me now, probably 15 or more, but for me then it was anything over, a 10K, so 6 miles. I ran 2 5Ks, and then I ran a 10K, and I was living in Florida at the time, and there's a bridge that goes over the Tampa Bay called the Skyway Bridge, and they did a race on that was a 10K. So then I got into that race and was just blown away from it. And then I did my first trail race, which was my first marathon. That was probably November of 2018. So I think I ran my first 5K in January, and then I ran a marathon by November.
Wow.
And lost about 70 pounds through that training process.
Wow, that is awesome. Now, with that training process, did you receive help from a trainer, or is this something that was trial and error that you found something that works for you?
I was fortunate enough to live 1.5 miles from the beach. So I found something that worked for me because it was a 5K to run to the beach. And so then if I ran any more than a 5K, it was just I considered it bonus miles, and I ran because I was on the beach. If I couldn't run anymore, I was walking on the beach. If I got tired, I could just walk, and I couldn't be in a bad space. Even if I was struggling, I'm walking on the beach. It's beautiful.
It's the beach.
Right.
So. Now, go ahead, continue.
So then I just, I finally, I started taking the job that I had, although sorry, light.
It's okay.
The job that I had some good benefits. We had self-managed PTO, so I could often take 3 or 4 day weekends. So I started doing backpacking trips because I was always ahead of work, and my boss allowed me to take these extra days. And I started, it was 10-hour drive to the Appalachian Trail, or 10 or 11. And I would just drive all night, just start backpacking as soon as I got to the parking spot. And I would do these 2 or 3 4 day backpacking trips And I was like, I'm going to do this whole thing. And then like, I went into my manager's office, for my yearly evaluation, my annual, evaluation. He's like, so anything, like after he does it, he's like, so is there anything you need to talk to me about? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to give you a 2-month notice, and I'm going to leave to hike the Appalachian Trail in July. And, and he was like the whole thing. And I was like, yeah, the whole thing. And he was like, I can't hold your job. I was like, that's fine. Like, I don't need you to hold my job. I'll find another job when I come back. And because I had to do it. I had to make the one day become today. Because otherwise it just gets too much gets in between like what I really truly want and what I'm truly passionate about. And I don't know, living in Florida, seeing people wait for retirement and then not follow their dreams because they're too tired. They don't have, it's a lot easier in my 30s to hike 2,000 miles than it will be in my 60s or 70s,
I think so.
Regardless of if I stay healthy the whole time, like it's just my joints can withstand a lot more weight and continuous pounding that I've put it through in the last few years. But it'll catch up to me one day. But
not today.
Not today. Yeah, I actually just am recovering off of an injury, and I'm really happy with how my run went today, which is great. So I hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2019, and I started in Maine and in like early July and finished in December in Georgia. And when I finished that, I went back to Florida, and I kind of went backwards. I worked in restaurants through college, and knew I could make decent money pretty quickly in the restaurant industry. So I got back into like waiting tables and realized that because I had been so disconnected, I actually really enjoyed these small interactions with tables, because I had been pretty isolated in the woods for so long. It was just like nice to be surrounded by people all the time. But then, that was end of 2019, 2020, that only lasted until March. And then COVID, the pandemic, just took that job right out from under me. But so I was like, well, now what? And I stayed, followed stay-at-home orders for a month. I was in Florida, so they only lasted a month. And I left, and I went out to Utah and did some rock climbing, which was a new sport I was getting into. And then I discovered another long trail called the Pacific Northwest Trail, and that goes from Glacier National Park to the Olympic coast, the coast of Washington. And that was about 1,200 miles.
Now, Mike, during this time, do you research the routes, or is this just all trial and error? You just follow the paths that's laid out?
Yeah, so I had done a lot of research for the Appalachian Trail. Like because it took 10 years after college before I finally hiked it. So that was like, I had spent so much time researching that and doing small backpacking trips. So like I said, I didn't just like one day be like, I'm just going to hike 2,000 miles. There we go. Did you lose me for a second?
Yeah, it's fine. We're back. Casual conversations, Mike. Casual conversations.
Yeah. So I had done a lot of small backpacking trips to train myself of what I needed from like a gear perspective all the way up to like my own diabetes management and various different things. with lots of small backpacking trips before I do a really large one. I had done some, everything has a guidebook. There's a guidebook for every trail, any hike, whatever. So I research all the hikes that I do, but I try to leave some of it open-ended. However, I do, my parents support me a lot with mailing out, like I leave a credit card with them and ask them to mail me insulin and different supplies along the way. So I do have an idea of like how many towns I'm going to go through while I'm backpacking. Like basic point to point information I need to know, but I don't really need to. And then there's like an app on my phone that has a lot of like information about water sources along the way and like all the like important survival things that you need to know. And it's like .gps. Okay, I'm on the trail, and in 2 miles I'm gonna find water. In 30 miles I'm gonna be in a town. Like so the like technology has really changed. Just not just from like diabetes.
Do you go off the path, or do you just stay on the trails?
So different trails have different opinions by the groups of people that hike them of like what constitutes a real whole hike or not. The Appalachian Trail is pretty strict of this is the route and this is the route you take. The other 2 trails I've done, the Pacific Northwest Trail and then the Continental Divide that I did this past year, those had a lot more alternate routes. Some of them were mapped out on the app that I used. Some of them were just referenced in a comment like, hey, you could go this way if you want to. I did it and I didn't die. So there, and I like that. I liked that sort of mystery, some of those mystery side quests that you could go on to find like a hot spring or to, I don't know, like there was on the Appalachian Trail, there was a comment on like a random Forest Service road. They're like, if you take this Forest Service road, it'll drop you out in front of a ski resort and they have unlimited French fries. They'll just keep bringing you French fries if you get French fries. And I was just like, I'm in. I've been hiking enough miles that French fries, as many as I can eat, I will do that. So there's always some like weird fun thing. And because this app allows people to comment and communicate with each other, it like makes the community of people hiking feel even more of a community, because we're like sharing information with each other that like, 20 years ago, you would have had to physically pass someone on trail and they would have been like, hey, you got to go check that spot out. But instead we can, more of us can communicate with more of us. And it's kind of fun. And then you finally run into, oh, you're that. Oh, I know. I've been following your comments. So it's really a fun community that I found on trail that I didn't really expect. I knew I'd meet people, but I didn't really expect the community to be as welcoming and friendly. And I mean, we're all going through the bad weather, the difficult climbs, all that at the same time. So like there's this unity in the struggle, which I think like a lot of us have been embracing through the pandemic, is like the community that has come out of this whole world going through a lot of changes and unpredictability. I think mostly it's uniting us as humans, and I like that.
Now with these different experiences that you have, Mike, how different is it preparing to climb a mountain or the sandstones in the Southwest versus hiking the Continental Divide or hiking the Appalachian trails?
I think in all aspects, gear is an important thing. For backpacking, there's a certain set of gear that you need. For rock climbing, there's a certain set of gear you need. And some of it's interchangeable. Like I will carry rope in like my backpacking bags. But I think like that is off-putting to a lot of people trying to enter into that sort of realm of adventuring, because it's a lot of it's costly. Cutting corners can end up being more expensive because the cheaper stuff doesn't last and is too heavy. So like, and it's kind of, I don't know. For me, I find diabetes is very different to manage from hiking to climbing, because there's a lot more adrenaline in like holding onto a wall that you could fall out. Like, so I'll have blood sugar spikes from the adrenaline of climbing, but of hiking, I have more low blood sugar issues that I have to deal with, especially on like long climbs and things like that, where I'm like walking uphill elevation change. And it's a different level of endurance too. Like hiking is a very endurance heavy thing, whereas climbing is more of a mind game. There's a lot of fear, and in the fear, you need to learn how to breathe. Like, when you're trying to hold on for your life, it's funny how quickly you stop breathing, which is the most important thing to like continue to fuel your muscles.
Really? I did not think, I hadn't thought of that. Well, I've never
like
climbed a mountain.
it's human nature too, though. Like I'm sure you can relate to when you're stressed out about something, like or trying to like fix a problem. It's like you tense up and like stop breathing, and then you're just like, oh wait, I need to, like, you take a deep breath. You're like, oh wow, I don't think I've done that for, when was the last time I breathed? Like, it's just it's those small moments in adventure are so important for me, because they remind me of like what I need to do in life to like in just regular life when I'm stressed out, like breathe before you react. It usually will end better than if you just react to stress. And it doesn't mean I'm good at it. Like I still snap and freak out, and I'm still a human, but like the more hiccups I have in survival mode on a backpacking trip, the less someone cutting me off in traffic seems like a big deal. The less someone at work annoying me seems like a problem. Like it's not. I turn it into a problem if I want it to be, but it doesn't have, like, it's really not my problem. Right? Like, just we're
definitely. Now, Mike, when you're on the trails and you're climbing mountains, now are you climbing one specific mountain, or are these multiple mountains that you've decided to climb?
So usually the trail follows ridges. So sometimes it'll be several peaks in a row. And then sometimes it's like, oh, I want to go up to that mountain, looks cool, so I'm going to figure out a way to get up to it and come down and connect back to the trail. There's some of that. But, the trails are usually pretty, I don't know. The trails are all a connection of other trails. Like it didn't, they didn't set out to make this long trail that goes across the whole country. They added 2 trails that already existed to build a network of trails, and then like this is the main route. So a lot of it's already decided for me which mountains I'm going to climb. Some of them I don't have access to because it's like, you know, there's issues of private land that, you know, most people are okay with you going onto their land, but they're sometimes surprised to see people. Like we had a fire closure this year on the Continental Divide Trail that pushed all of us in to the middle, like more into the middle of Montana than along the Idaho border where the route's supposed to go. And some people were approached by like legitimate cowboys on horses with guns, asking them why they were walking through like why every day there's people walking through their property, like this never happens, what is going on? And like they weren't like really threatening, but it was also kind of like, hey, you shouldn't, like, you gotta ask for permission before you come through here.
Wow.
Yeah, there's real cowboys out here in the West.
And you don't want to trespass on the cowboys on their land.
No, they don't. They're not really too forgiving about that. But no one got hurt. Like pretty much what I've learned as a stranger coming into towns, coming into communities, hitchhiking into towns, because that's how you get into towns while you're backpacking. Like if you bring kindness to the table when you're in an uncomfortable situation, like most people will reflect kindness back to you. Like it's you know, in general, most people don't want to hurt other people. Like like we are pretty kind as a species. You know, there's always outliers, but for the most part, like I've had some of the most kind people pick me up, offer to take me to their house to like have a shower or clean up and feed me. Like it's really great, the kindness that people give you, or like, hey, you got to stop and get ice cream here. Like this is the best ice cream in town. Like get some, or you know, like it's just yeah, people are kind, and they're more likely to be kind if I bring them kindness too. Like even the cowboys that are like, hey, why are you on our land? It's like, oh, I'm sorry, like apologize and just be like, hey, I didn't realize. We ended up having to get our section that went through private land was going to be on Northwestern Energy, and we were going to try to cross this dam that they had just gated off. And we would have been stuck and we would have never seen the no trespassing sign because we were coming from behind where they expected people to be coming in. And this woman was running and was like, where are y'all going? This road just dead ends. And we're like, yeah, we were just going to like bushwhack around the lake and figure out how to get to that road over there. And she's like, yeah, you can't, they like, that dam is not, you can't cross on that dam. She's like, how about you go down to that first cabin, talk to my brother-in-law. He's got a boat. He'll take you across the lake. And then, so like 8 of us got into this guy's boat and he drove us to the dam, or like to the dam, and was like, yep, you guys weren't going to make it across that.
That is definitely, that's kind. Yes.
Yeah.
That's being kind and generous and polite. Yeah.
Yeah. Never thought I'd get a hitch on a fancy boat, but I got a hitch on a fancy boat.
This is all part of your adventure.
Right. Better than a shotgun and a cowboy, so.
You don't want to ride on their horse.
I mean, that would be a dream hitch, to get a ride on a horse. You're like,
really? So have you ever went horseback riding through any of these trails?
I haven't. No, that's not something I've done. I did. I did the Grand Canyon when I first came to Arizona. I went rim to rim to rim, and I saw the mules at the bottom, and I was a little jealous that I had to hike up without a mule. Um, it seems like the easier way up would be the mule ride, but no, I haven't. I think I horseback rode a couple times on like family vacations when I was a little kid, but no, I've never gotten into. Um, I'm kind of into human power over
Okay.
other powers.
Now, when you're on these trails, do you go by yourself or do you link up with a group of other hikers?
Uh, Most people start by themselves, but we end up meeting people along the way. I was in what's called a bubble. Like every year, a lot of people start around the same time, and this bubble just kind of moves up through the country. And there were pretty much every time I went into a town, there were like 10 other hikers just leaving town, 10 other hikers coming into town with me, and like 10 people behind us the next day, sometimes more. So we would just take over these towns and like rent out the entire hotel, and like all of us would be, hanging out there and like cleaning up and getting food, resupplying, and yeah, so many lifelong friends I've made on the trail. Especially this year. I don't know if my timing was perfect but like the group of people that I was hiking with are some of my favorite people in the world, and I now have people all over the country that I know, which makes living in a van kind of fun too, because I pretty much know someone everywhere that can give me a place to take a shower or whatever.
Right. That sounds really awesome. That's something. Now, when you are on your trails, now how often are you deciding to, I'm just gonna hike the trail and camp out on the trail versus, okay, I camped out for a certain amount of days. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and find a hotel. When do you make decisions?
I make that decision when I'm in town. So I look at how much distance is between the where I am and the next town, or like 2 towns ahead. Like I can really only carry. I really only want to carry 3 to 5 days worth of food. I can carry 7 to 8 days worth of food, but those first couple days are going to be not fun because my pack's going to be so heavy. I had one 8 day carry on the Continental Divide, and yeah, it was fine. It was it was very very heavy first couple days, and then I just as I ate more food, it got tolerable, and I got more used to carrying the weight. But I try to keep it around 3 to 5 days, and it's really based on mileage between towns and how many miles I'm willing to walk each day, which I also have to look at the terrain. How much up and down am I doing? Is it a lot of climbing or is it relatively flat? I can do more miles if it's not as much climbing. But it's one of those things that like in the beginning you start slow and you work your way up to it. It's not like I off the bat I wasn't doing 30 miles in a day, but by the end of the hike I was doing 25 to 30 miles pretty regularly because your body gets used to repetitive things. And the hike becomes very repetitive, which also becomes very meditative and a very good place to process mental health things.
I
on
was just
trail.
about to get into that, Mike. I was wanting to ask you, like, on the trails, are you finding yourself more reflective and meditating on life, anything in particular, or what just ever comes to your spirit?
It's a lot of whatever comes to the spirit, because it's so constant, and it's so it's easy and hard to be present at the same time, but like it's very easy to be present in the discomfort. So like when you're climbing uphill with a heavy backpack on your back, you're just really, all you can think about is how uncomfortable you are. Which is unfortunate, because it's beautiful all around you, and it's just like, oh man, I can barely breathe. Pack is heavy, my back hurts, I'm tired. But like, I'm in it. Like, I am in that moment, even if it is uncomfortable. And like, when that realization is just like I'm not thinking about the office. I'm not thinking about, you know, drama in a relationship with someone. Like, I'm not thinking about what someone else is doing somewhere else. Like, I am really just in what I am doing right at that moment. And, if I, sometimes it's really positive things, like, oh, wow, I just made it to the top of this mountain. Look at this view. This is fantastic. But like, it's the struggle of getting up that mountain that makes that view so amazing, and then it makes that moment so special. Is like the work that I physically put in to get myself there, and to stay. Like, some of it's stubbornness, to hike all the way from border to border of the United States. Like, you have to have a sense of like stubbornness to put up with some pretty challenging weather and terrain, and just mental space. But it's impossible to walk for all day long and not hit some sort of meditative state where you're just very present of the now. And
oh yeah, because you definitely have to have a mindset to persevere through the terrain, the physical exhaustion that you're experiencing, I'm sure. And also, being a diabetic, you also have those challenges that can become a hindrance, but you're choosing to just go through it.
right, yeah, diabetes is exhausting. Just the amount of extra mental space that it takes up in our lives is a huge part of management of it. Like, it's not just the blood sugars, it's the hours of waiting for information, for insulin to start working, for taking too much insulin, and then waiting for food to start working. It's sometimes I just have to sit down in the middle of the trail and just eat a candy bar and like sit there until I'm able to function again, which is
do you find yourself saying to yourself, because you have diabetes, you have to prove that you can do this, or it's just a point of this is something that you enjoy doing?
Yeah, I have to think about that sometimes. I have to, I really have to check my motives on why I'm doing it, because it is really easy to let the ego run wild and be like, hey, I have to prove that I'm this like badass person that can climb mountains and whatever, and like, that is a huge challenge, I think, for everyone that is in like the extreme sports of some kind. Like,
Not that it's a bad thing, and not that it's a bad thing either.
It's not, but it's easy to try to get into this like one up. Like I sometimes feel like I have to constantly be adventuring when I'm exhausted and I really just need to be sleeping. And I'm trying to be more vocal about that part, because I find that like it's very easy to romanticize the lifestyle that I'm living, and it's not easy. I'm basically homeless 8 months of the year. And some people treat me like I'm homeless. Like, some of the really wealthy communities in Colorado were not very receptive to smelly hikers coming into their town when they, are very wealthy resort owning people. And that's hard. And like living in a van and like finding a place to just go to the bathroom is sometimes very hard. Taking a shower regularly, like thing, and it makes me really appreciate it when I have access to it all the time, which is good. But like, I think social media is a great thing. Or it's connected me with a lot of people that like the same things I do, which is hard to connect with people because we're out disconnecting all the time. So, but I think on social media, I'm guilty of it too. We share our best moments. We don't share the bad moments, and there are, bad moments when you're woken up by cops because you're sleeping somewhere you're not supposed to be sleeping in a van, or, you run into cowboys with guns that are like, hey, you can't be here on our land. Like, or you're just really depressed because you haven't seen anyone.
The process isn't pretty. The process isn't pretty, and what you show a lot of the product. And when people see that, they don't know everything that's going on behind. If you did share all of that, how adventurous would people be? That's something that has to be considered, even though, we don't see all of the issues that you have where, like you say, you're homeless, you don't have any place to take a shower. Sometimes you have to go through something to get to that beautiful scene on top of the mountaintop.
Right. Yeah. And I think that applies to everything in life. Like there's no growth without discomfort. And I mean, that's unfortunate, or maybe it just is it's a good thing too, because like, I like to be comfortable, like, sure. But like, at the same time, like, I don't like to be stagnant. And I think that is where I felt like I was when I was working in a cubicle for a salary that was just good enough. And like, like I was comfortable, but I wasn't growing. I wasn't like, and I was too young. I think everyone's too young to be too comfortable. Because growth is the whole, there's always room to grow positively, and but it takes overcoming challenges to grow positively, and and sometimes it takes steps backwards to do it too, which is sometimes hard when you're climbing a mountain.
And also, Mike, I think as society, we don't want that discomfort. We don't want that uncomfortableness, and we're almost in a state of complacency with how we have to have a certain routine that we have to follow, and we have to maintain the status quo. And it's difficult to, step out of that comfort zone to try something new, to experience something new.
Yeah, it is. And it's difficult for me too. Like, I'm now like in a city, which is crazy, like absolutely crazy. There's so many people. and like, I'm having a hard time connecting to to people, even though I'm surrounded by people, because like I went from being surrounded by people that were hiking to Canada. Like we were all doing the same thing. Now I'm surrounded by people that are being pulled in 700 different directions. And I'm just like, I don't even know. Like I lost my tribe. Like I don't know where I fit in anymore. And, that makes coming back to society to work for, the winter season very difficult for me, because I have really minimalized my life to a point where like I have a hard time, especially in the Christmas season, like all the like buying of things, like it's just like crazy to me, because like I only have so much. I live in a minivan. Like I can't, like an extra t-shirt will like cause my clothes to like explode out of the container that they're held in. Like so I find myself having a hard time getting into like pursuing relationships of any kind since I've been back, because it's a bit overwhelming, because of how
on your hikes, you've detached yourself from emotional noise, from societal noise. You were away from all of that. Now you have a period of readjustment. Now I have to connect back. I have to plug back into life.
Right. And so like I gave myself some extra savings cushion so that I didn't have to jump back. Like I'm still not, like I said at the beginning, I have a job that I don't have a job yet. But that like I just moved here like 2 weeks ago. And I was giving myself through the New Year's change to like realize that I am here, and like I'm staying put. I'm going to be grounded for several months. And like that in itself is something I have to process, because I've been so just go with the flow of life that now I'm like, oh, now I'm going to stay here and I have to create life here. And that's different than what I've been doing. I've been like chasing life. Now I have to create life in one place. And so I've just been running a lot, finding trails.
Like there are definitely different lenses that you would have to wear. When you're on the trail, you're viewing life in a certain way and you're experiencing your life in a certain way, versus when you're back in the inner city and the job, you have to get a job now. Those seems like those are definitely two different realities that you have to navigate through and you experience.
And they're so polar opposites of each other that it's like in both, like the first couple weeks of a long hike are the same. Like it's like I've done this before, but this is like, you mean I'm not gonna have a shower for a few days and I'm not gonna sleeping in a tent? Okay, this is a little uncomfortable. There's a rock in my back. Like this is weird. But like I think with all things, like we adapt, right? So like we adapt to the uncomfortable things, which is good most of the time. I think sometimes though, like we adapt so much that they become comfortable. Like I like if I hadn't said like enough is enough with this job I'm unhappy with, like I would have adapted enough to be like, to convince myself I am happy with it. And then I won't. And then I sit in the discomfort that has now changed to comfortable enough that I don't, pursue that growth again. Like it's really easy to get stuck if we let ourselves get used to whatever it is. So like shaking it up is, I'm doing it to an extreme. I don't think like that's I take too many things to the extreme. But I think the exercise of shaking things up every now and then allows me to appreciate the challenges of that adjustment period. Like the more adjustment periods we have, you don't need to always be going. I feel like I've been going through an adjustment period since September because I got off trail. I've been trying to figure out how to live in a van, and then like now I'm moving into a city. So I think I've just been like, I'm really glad to be in one space because my life has been so uncertain for a few months that was becoming too much. And now my life is still uncertain, but I at least know where my next shower is going to be. I have a refrigerator. I have food in the refrigerator, and I have a bed. Like I have the staples.
You have some form of stability,
right? And then I can, which is good. I don't know. It's hard to give up the adventure, but it's good to take a break from it because I think I was physically exhausting myself without even recognizing it, all because I was just chasing the next thing, the next adventure. And sometimes rest is the adventure I need to take.
Oh wow, that's good. Rest is the adventure. That's a good one.
And sometimes it is a big adventure because I know my personality doesn't like to do it, right? Like I'm not good at staying put. So it is an adventure to me. Like I also have a lot of friends that are getting married and having kids and like doing that. And that is an adventure too. Like you don't have to hike across the country to like have your life be an adventure. Like to me, having kids and a family and like that's wild to me.
Yes.
Because like that's so different than what I'm doing that like, but to them, that's what I'm doing is crazy. But like it's all perspective. Like we're all living the adventure. Like that's what life's all like. Life is an adventure. And like, but we're all on different trails. We're all on different sections of. Some of us are on the same trail. Some of us are on different trails. But like we're all adventuring in some way. At least I hope. Like
we're all hiking uncharted paths.
Right.
We're just trying to figure it all out.
Right.
Well, Mike, this has been a very interesting conversation. You gave me a lot to think about. And, thinking about what you said early on, being kind to individuals. And when you're kind, that comes back to you, that energy. So it's like positive energy you're sending out and positive energy you're receiving back. Breathe. Just taking a moment to just breathe it all in. That helps with your mind. That helps to clear your mind before you react. Just thinking about breathing as a pro, before we react, that's something that we can do before we react. Just taking a moment to breathe and just understanding that everything can be an adventure. If you're in the office, you have the family, that is an adventure of its own, not necessarily hiking or climbing a mountain, but it's an adventure. It's an uncharted path that we're trying to get through. I really enjoyed this conversation. This is a great way to kick off the new year with a safe space conversation. Thank you so much, Mike, for being my guest on Safe Space. This has been a great conversation, very enlightening. Also, I want to thank my guests for joining us. on SafeSpace this week. Please tune in next week as we will have another conversation. I will be conversating with a group of medical students from UIC, and we will be talking about a project that they are working on. So please join me. And as usual, take a moment and shine your light in the dark. Thank you for tuning in.